Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Hare, Jaya Prabhupada, Prabhupada. Jaya Prabhupada, Prabhupada. Jaya Gurudev, Gurudev. Kodanitai Maya Poshashi, Kodanitai Maya Poshashi, Maya Poshashi, Kodanitai Jaya Maya Poshashi. Iskam Guru Vindaki, Shri Prabhupada ki jai. So reading from Bhagvatam. As an incarnation of Krishna in the Srimad Bhagvatam. But in the same Srimad Bhagvatam, it is stated that Lord Buddha appeared in order to bewilder the atheistic class of men. Therefore, his philosophy is meant for bewildering the atheists and should not be accepted. If someone asks, If someone asks, why should Krishna propagate atheistic principles? The answer is that it was the desire of the Supreme Personality of Godhead to end the violence which was then being committed in the name of the Vedas. The so-called religionists were falsely using the Vedas to justify such violent acts as meat eating, and Lord Buddha came to lead the fallen people away from such a false interpretation of the Vedas. Also for the atheists, Lord Buddha preached atheism so that they would follow him and thus be tricked into devotional service to Lord Buddha or Krishna. Jai, Srila Rupa Goswami Prabhupada Ki Jai. So interesting to note that it's not just humans that Krishna is concerned with. He'll come down to save the animals as well, which was Lord Buddha's reason for coming down. I remember years ago people used to say, are you a vegetarian? They'd say, well, that's not got anything to do with it. Let's just talk about God. That's just a minor thing. But now it's become a major thing. A lot of people now that are saying they profess another religion. They're accepting that vegetarianism is a very important principle, which they used to just brush aside at one time. One time I was given a leaflet and it had a picture of Satan and he had a bowl in front of him and the bowl had bananas, pineapple and a few other fruits as well. And the leaflet said, Satan is a vegetarian. So they were giving them out. So they were promoting, they say that in Kali Yuga religion will become irreligion and irreligion will become religion. So they were promoting that to not kill animals was demoniac. Okay. Srimad Bhagvatam Ki Jai. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. 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 Thank you. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Reading from Srimad Bhagvatam. This is Canto 7, Chapter 9. Prahlad pacifies the Lord with prayers. And the text is text 8. Shiprada uvacha Brahmadaya Sura Gana Munayo Ta Siddha Brahmadaya Suragana Munayo Ta Siddha Sadvaikatana Gatayo Vachasam Pravahai Sadvaikatana Gatayo Vachasam Pravahai Naraditam Puru Gunaya Adunapi Pipru Naraditam Puru Gunaya Adunapi Pipru Kim Toshtam Ahati Sa Me Hare Ugra Jate Kim Toshtam Ahati Same Hare Ugra Jate Shri Pradruvacha Brahmadayo Suragana Monayota Siddha Sadvaikatana Gatayo Vachasam Pravahai Naraditam Puru Guna Aduna Pipipru Kim Toshtam Ahati Same Hare Ugra Jate Shri Prarada Uvacha Brahma Dayo Suragana Munayo Tasidha Sadvai Katana Gatayo Vachasam Pravahai Naraditam Purugana Aduna Pipipru Kim Toshtamahati Same Hare Ugrajate Shiva Siddha Salvai Kitana Katayo Vachasam Pravahai Kim Toshtamahati Same Hare Ugrajate Shipradu Vacha Ramadayo Suragana Munayo Tasitha Sadvaikanta Gotayo Vachasam Vahe Aditam Purugana Adnu Kim Tushtamahati Same Hare Ugrajate Shri Pradaro Vacha Ramaliyo Suragana Manayo Tasidha Vaikatana Katayo Vachasam Pravahe Adaditam Puruguna Aduna Pipipru Kim Toshtamahati Same Hare Ugrajat. Any of the ladies? Shiva Siddha Sadvaikatana Gatayo Vachasam Prabha Ustamahati Samay Hare Ujate Shiprarada Uvacha. Prahlad Maharaj prayed, Brahma Adaya, headed by Lord Brahma, Suragana, the inhabitants of the upper planetary systems, Munaya, the great saintly persons, Ata, as well, like the four Kumaras and others, Siddha, who've attained perfection or full knowledge, Sattva, to spiritual existence, Ekantana, Gataya, who have taken without diversion to any material activities. Vachasam, of description or words. Pravahai, by streams. Na, not. Araditum, to satisfy. Purugunai, although fully qualified. Aduna, until now. Api, even, Pipru, were able, Kim, whether, Tushtum, to become pleased, Ahati, is able, Saha, he the Lord, Me, my, Hari, the Supreme Personality of Godhead, Ugrajate, who am born in an Asuric family. Translation. Prahlad Maharaj prayed, how is it possible for me, who have been born in a family of Asuras, to offer suitable prayers to satisfy the Supreme Personality of Godhead? Even until now, all the demigods headed by Lord Brahma and all the saintly persons could not satisfy the Lord by streams of excellent words, although such persons are very qualified, being in a mode of goodness. Then what is to be said of me? I am not at all qualified. Responsibly, please. Prahlad Maharaj prayed, how is it possible for me, who have been born in a family of Asuras, to offer suitable prayers to satisfy the Supreme Personality of Godhead? Even until now, all the demigods, headed by Lord Brahma, and all the saintly persons, could not satisfy the Lord by streams of excellent words. Although such persons are very qualified, being in the mode of goodness, then what is to be said of me? I am not at all qualified. By Srila Prabhupada ki jai. A Vaishnav who is fully qualified to serve the Lord still thinks himself extremely low while offering prayers to the Lord. For example, Krishna Das Kaviraj Goswami, the author of Chaitanya Charitamrita, says, Jagai Madai Hoitam Muni say Papishta, Push Puri Shara Kita Hoitam Muni say Lagista. That's the Adi Leela, chapter 5, text 205. Thus he considers himself unqualified, lower than the worms in stool, and more sinful than Jagai and Madai. A pure Vaishnava actually thinks of himself in this way. Similarly, although Prahlad Maharaj was a pure, exalted Vaishnava, he thought himself most unqualified to offer prayers to the Supreme Lord. Mahajano Yenakata Sapanta. Every pure Vaishnav should think like this. One should not be falsely proud of his Vaishnav qualifications. Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu has therefore instructed us, Trinadapi Sanichena, Tarora Apisa Hishnana, Amanina Manadidena, Ketaniya Sadahari. One should chant the holy name of the Lord in a humble state of mind, thinking oneself lower than the straw in the street. One should be more tolerant than a tree, devoid of all sense of false prestige, and should be ready to offer all respect to others. In such a state of mind, one can chant the holy name of the Lord constantly. Unless one is meek and humble, to make progress in spiritual life is very difficult. Om Agana Timarandasya Gananjana Shalakaya Chakshuran Malitam Jena Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha Shri Chaitanya Manobhistam Stapitam Yena Bhutale Swayam Rupa Kadamayam Tadati Swapadantikam Jaya Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadha Shrivas Adi Gaura Bhattarinda Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Vanchikalpatrubhyascha, Kripa Sindhubheva cha, Panitanam, Bhavanebhyo, Vaishnavebhyo, Namo Namaha. So Prahlad Maharaj is in a very humble mood. He feels that because he's from a family of Asuras, how can he offer any prayers that will be suitable if even all the prayers from the great demigods like Lord Brahma were not able to satisfy the Lord, even though they were excellent streams of words. So I'm not at all qualified. And then Prabhupada goes on to explain that this mood of humility was there in Krishnadas Kaviraj Goswami when he wrote the Chaitanya Charitamrita, which is the series of books. There's a golden set of books we have, and there's 17 volumes in that. And that was written 500 years ago by a great saint called Krishna Das Kaviraj Goswami. And although you would think he would have a lot to be proud of, he considered himself lower than the worm in the stool and more sinful than Jagai and Madai. Jagai and Madai were a famous pair of Brahmins that had fallen away from their Brahminical caste and had systematically broken every single rule in the Manu Samhita, which is the book of all the rules that a human being should follow. So they took every rule, they broke every performed every sinful act systematically. So they were considered the most sinful. And Krishnadas Kaviraj considered himself more sinful. So it's interesting because it's diametrically opposed to how you would think, you would feel as you became more spiritually advanced. You'd think the better I get, the lower everybody else will be. And when I'm really pure, everyone else will just be like insects. And then the actual reality is that the more elevated I become, the more I feel like I'm an insect and everybody else is okay. And to bear that weight, it's a great austerity to be humble. And to bear that weight, you have to be spiritually strong. And sometimes you can be practicing spiritual life and you can find yourself being humbled and you can become discouraged, when actually it's part of the process and we should become encouraged. But generally, if you're feeling lower than the straw on the street, then you don't feel so encouraged. If you feel like everybody else is light years ahead of you, then you don't feel so encouraged. Generally, the way we tend to do it, unfortunately, is we take our materialistic estimation of what spiritual advancement is, and then we look down on others. Oh, he wasn't there for Mangalati. Oh, he wasn't there for this. Or he wasn't chanting his rounds. Or he didn't do many books yesterday. Or he didn't turn up. Therefore, he's lower. So we reverse it. Like Chaitanya Charan was saying, we have hosts. So those that are there in the office, they're looking at results. And he didn't turn up on time. He didn't do all his work he was supposed to. They're there just for the office. So that's a carry on from how we progress in material life. We try to get ahead of others, and the more we can do, the more money we can make, and the more results we can achieve, then that means we're better than others. You know, extrinsic values rather than intrinsic values. And so this mood of humility could get bypassed completely as something which is dysfunctional and an obstacle to getting on in being successful in life. So we reverse the whole process. And as you feel like everybody else is better than you, then you're actually getting better. Interesting, isn't it? And could be confusing also, disorientating. Lower than the straw on the street and more tolerant than the tree. And it's interesting, Krishna's asking us not just to be tolerant. He says, Matra spasas konte asitoshna sukha dukama agama paino. He says, learn to tolerate without being disturbed. So sometimes we do tolerate because we don't have any choice. We have to tolerate. But the challenge is, can you tolerate and not be disturbed? Can you feel lower than everybody else and not be discouraged? And when other people are being shown respect, can you be devoid of being envious or resentful of the fact that this person's getting all the respect and I'm not getting any respect? So that's the challenge in practicing devotional services. Can we actually achieve this genuine mood of humility? And can we recalibrate our expectations of what we think advancement in spiritual life means? That it doesn't mean everyone will be bowing down to me in 10 years from now. That everybody will be hanging on every word that I say, and when I walk into the assembly, everyone will part and offer their humble obeisances to me. So that's maybe what we start off thinking, and then how can we change that to the reality is that we should be feeling insignificant, unqualified. Here's Prahlad Maharaj. He's one of the Mahajans, one of the great authorities that we follow. And he's feeling unqualified, contrasted with people who are materially very elevated, very capable, who are feeling qualified to offer their prayers, and they're offering all their streams of wonderful words, but it's not achieving the desired result. Lord Nrsimhadev is still angry, and eventually they think, let's try this 5-year-old boy, Prahlad, maybe he can say something. And Prahlad's feeling like overawed at all these amazing personalities, and now he has to speak to Lord Nrsimhadev. So he's stating immediately his humility, which is actually the qualification. The more we feel disqualified, the more we are qualified. So that's why we have to read to understand that, because you wouldn't know that by default. You have to think about that. You can't just go by how you feel. You have to kind of program your preconceived ideas. And so that's why the reading is very, very important. And the reading of Srila Prabhupada's books are especially important. Krishna said to Prabhupada, you go and write the books, and I'll take care of everything else. But what he didn't say was that he was also going to write the books through Srila Prabhupada. That's why even Srila Prabhupada likes to read his books, because he's reading Krishna, writing the books. So that's special, you know. If you had a book that had been written by Krishna, you'd be very interested to read it. And Krishna knew, being Trikaligya, he's aware of past, present, and future. He understands what it is we need to hear right now at this moment in time. If you look at the purport to Apichat Sudaracharo, Srila Vishnu Chakravarti Thakur gives a very, very scanty purport, not very long at all. Because at that time, the general populace wouldn't have taken Apichat Sudaracharo out of context, even if you're considered the most sinful of sinners. If you continue on in devotional service, then you're considered saintly because you're rightly situated. So Prabhupada, understanding by Krishna's mercy that could be really taken out of context and could become the seventh offense, that I'm going to do sinful activity on the strength that Krishna's going to be okay with me. He's a loving God. I'm so sorry, and I'll be okay after that. And then we take, so Prabhupada in a few parts, he says, and eventually ends the paper by saying, if you continually keep making these mistakes and not reforming, then although you're a devotee, you're not a very high devotee. And nobody wants to be not a high devotee. We all want to be high devotees in the sense that we don't take it for granted. Krishna consciousness means not taking anything for granted. Krishna consciousness. It means Krishna appreciation. And appreciation means gratitude. Very hard to be Krishna conscious and resentful at the same time. If you've ever tried it, it doesn't work. You can't be resentfully Krishna conscious. You can only be gratefully Krishna conscious. If you're resentful, then you're disqualified from appreciating Krishna. And the impurities that are there in the heart, the false prestige, the lack of respect, the irreverence, is a disqualification. Any questions or comments? Yes, Kartikeya.
Thank you for beautiful words. In the last chapter today, we see, like in the 8th chapter, the last verse was spoken by the Vishnu Parshad. And we understand Parshad of Lord Vishnu, who resides eternally in the Vaikuntha Lok. They are the pure devotees of the Lord. They have completely surrendered to the Lord. So how come such pure and exalted devotees, when they start speaking prayers, and they couldn't even specify Lord Nrsimhadev? Because if somebody is situated in that position, is it not like, they understand the mood of the Lord?
Well, there's 3 levels of devotees. That's why it's best to perform devotional service here on earth, because it's very hard to be anything other than a Kanishta Adhikari in the higher planetary systems, because there's so much material facility. And in Madhuri Kandamani, Vishnu Chakravarti Thakur explains 6 forms of unsteady devotional service. And one of them is called Taranga Ranjani, which means to enjoy the facilities. It's very difficult. If you had a body that was going to live for 10,000 years, and it was beautiful. It didn't grow old, and when you sweated, it smelled like lotus flowers. And when you spoke, you sounded like a Gandharva. Very, very hard not to become enamored by all that. And that enjoyment of the facilities that you've been given distracts you from steady devotional service. You can perform devotional service, but Kanishta means without being fixed. Kar is without, and Nishta fixed. So you don't achieve that level of maturity. Whereas here on earth, there's not a lot to really get distracted by. There's not really very much on offer. And so you can rise to the Nishta platform quickly, hopefully, within 10, 15, 20 years steady devotional service, you can become Nishta, where you're fixed. And then that becomes a higher grade of devotional service you can render. And Madhyamas become Uttamas very quickly because they render such a high caliber of devotional service. They start to really progress. It's like going up, the initial stage is like going up a hill. And then when you come to Nishta, the hill levels. So then you're not having to work so hard to make progress. And then when you reach the stage of Uttama, then it's like going down the hill. It's not an effort anymore. The holy name is flowing out your mouth. Devotional service is joyfully performed. Every word is a song. Every step is a dance. And then it becomes spontaneous. Any other questions or comments? It can be disorientating if you're not well read. Then you may actually be making good progress and mistake it. It's like having a disease and you go into hospital. So you start taking the medicine, and then you seem to be getting worse than you were. The medicine's tasting really bad, and doesn't seem to be having a desired effect. Krishna Namacharya. Charitadi Siddhapya Vidya Pitopa Tapta Rasanasya Narochikano. So it doesn't seem sweet. It seems that I'm more. I remember I was out on Sankirtan one day with a devotee, and he was feeling more sorry for himself than the people. We're supposed to be feeling compassion. And he was feeling compassion for himself. Well, these people don't have to stand out here all day passing out books. They don't have to follow any principles. They don't have to give up their material desires. They can just go and enjoy themselves. And look at me, here I am, I've taken all these vows. I have to get up early in the morning. Nobody's interested in the books. I don't really want to do it. So he's feeling compassion for himself rather than compassion for the fallen souls. So we have to be well read. We have to be able to understand what is going on and what should be going on and what are good signs that we are making progress. If we're feeling unworthy and unqualified, that's great. Don't become discouraged. Become encouraged. That you've been given an opportunity, despite your shortcomings. Because you may think, I'm God's gift to devotional service. I'm so elevated. The devotee should be so happy that I'm around. Every time I do something, I should be applauded. Everyone should be recognizing me and respecting me. People shouldn't be getting on my case or nitpicking. They should just be bowing down before me and thanking me for anything that I do, because anything I do is an extra. So I should. So that's a misconception, and then Krishna rectifies our misconceptions through the association of devotees. If you decide I'm going to abandon the association of devotees because it's a constant inconvenience, I'm going to go and live in a cave. I'll chant. I'll keep off Facebook. There'll be no Wi-Fi. I'll live on potatoes and have grass soup. It'll be fine. But you won't make much advancement because the qualities of devotee, the 26 qualities of a devotee, you don't know what they are or how to practice them in a cave. How can you be humble or kind or sensitive or tolerant when there's nobody to interact with to develop those qualities? You may think you're really humble. You've been in the cave for 20 years and you come down and someone steps on your toe and, who do you think you are? You just stood on my toe. And then you're like, oh, I'm not humble. But you wouldn't find out you weren't until you were in the association, especially the association of devotees, because they're always reminding you what you should be doing. This can be annoying. Shishiko Nitai Mai Pashashi Ki Jai, Shri Tulsinath Maharaj Ki Jai, Shri Giridhari Ki Jai, Shri Nrsimhadev Bhagavan Ki Jai. Any other questions or comments? Yes, Alan?
So I find it useful in terms of humility and the God that we just sort of recognize in terms of what we have to do things with Krishna, but also other things. So if we're eating meat, if we're killed insects, if we're wearing clothes that are made by steak and sweatshops, for some things you don't consider that, you know, maybe a bit better than we actually are. We're all created and God, and so if we do that, so that's actually a big shot for the defense actually. And I'd like to think about compassion itself. I was having a conversation yesterday about compassion, about something being what can we become compassionate and compassion for everything? But natural thing that comes in
Well, compassion, I can only theoretically speak about that because you become compassionate when you're aware how much people are suffering. And you may not be able to perceive how frustrated. Sometimes Krishna gives you a glimpse how people are very frustrated and how much they are suffering. And then you feel sorry that they don't have any information or knowledge. Sankirtan is a very good exercise to go out and distribute books publicly because if you're just in the temple all the time associating with devotees, you can forget what you have, how much knowledge and how much relief from suffering you have. And when you go out and you approach people, you realize that although it doesn't seem like you have a lot of knowledge or are aware of a lot of things or realize a lot of things in comparison to the association of the devotees that you're in, when you go out and you approach people, then you realize how much value what you have is, how fortunate you are, what a wonderful opportunity that you have. And you can maintain the mood of humility, although you feel you're in a more fortunate position. You realize when you're talking to this person, presenting them with a book, that if this person had been to as many Mangalatis as I have, had taken as much Mahaprasadam as I have, had seen the deities and chanted my rounds and circumambulated Tulsidev as many times as I have, he'd be doing a lot better than I am. So that way you can see people's potential. And if you develop the vision of eternity, then you can see that they're not going to have a human form in the next life. And just by intervening Mahapunya, by people just touching the sacred scriptures or hearing the holy name or taking some prasadam, food that's been offered to Krishna, they secure a human birth in their next life. And although it doesn't seem like a lot is happening right now in terms of people joining and temples opening, although that is also going on. But what is happening is the preaching field is becoming enriched with potential devotees that would normally have lost the human form of life, that will now come back, take birth again, and have an attraction to practice swasti aina, to go on the auspicious journey of practicing devotional service and returning home back to Godhead. And those swasti ainas, a lot of them won't complete the journey in one lifetime, and then they'll come back in the next life, and then there'll be a culmination of people who are qualified to go home back to Godhead over the period of a few centuries. Right now we're in the pioneering stage. We're planting things. We can't expect, when you're growing, you can't demand that the seeds immediately fructify. You have to plant them, cultivate them, and then you have to be patient and wait till the right season, and then they bear fruit. And if you're an impatient gardener, sometimes you plant something and then you're wondering, did that actually start growing? There's been no sign of it. You leave it for a month or two, and then finally you pull it out of the ground to check, and whoops, there's the roots. and then you've killed it. So you have to be patient. There's a story about being patient, actually. Interesting story. There was a boy called Ling. This was a Chinese story, by the way. And the emperor wanted someone to take over from him. Now, the emperor had like 8 sons, and they all thought, well, the emperor's sons will take over from him. But the emperor said, I want anyone in the kingdom to be the next emperor if he's qualified. So he asked all the young boys to step forward, not just his 8 sons. And he gave them all a seed. And he said, I'd like you to plant this seed, cultivate it, and come back in a year. And the one with the best results will become the next emperor. So Ling got his seed, and he planted it, and he watered it, and he watched it, and he prayed, and nothing happened after a week. And all the other boys started to have little sprouts growing, and in a month they were starting to grow quite, and some of them were quite advanced in the growing stages. And so Ling was getting more and more frustrated. Nothing was happening, and he was thinking, maybe I'm watering it too much. And then he stopped, and he thought, maybe I didn't water it enough. And anyway, an agonizing year went past, and everybody had to go before the emperor. So Ling stayed right at the back. His mother forced him. She said, you just go. And he said, but I've got nothing to show. The emperor will be angry. He may even have me killed. She says, you just do what you're supposed to do. Anyway, so they're all there with their big plants and flowers and fruits on them, and some of them were very big, and the emperor was looking at them all. And then he noticed this boy right at the back, and he had a pot with nothing. And he said, who's that boy? He said, oh, that's Ling. He said, come forward. So Ling thought, I'm really in trouble now. So he with a shaking hand, he presented the pot before the king, before the emperor. And the emperor said, what is your name? And he said, Ling. The emperor stood up and he said, the next emperor of this kingdom will be this boy, Ling. And then the emperor revealed that he'd given everybody seeds that had been roasted. And so everyone else had lied because they couldn't be patient and just see what the results were, you know. And the real result was that there shouldn't have been a result. And because they had a preconceived idea of what the emperor was going to be pleased with, therefore they lied and they falsified. Interesting, eh? That's in that storybook by Dirishanta Maharaj. It's got reality and illusion. It shows this person looking into a stream, and he's trying to get the fruit, but it's a reflection of the tree. And somebody else can see the tree, and he's taking the fruit from the tree. That's the real fruits, and these are the illusory fruits. So if you're practicing and it doesn't seem like there is a result, the result is that you're becoming humble, and you're becoming patient, and you're becoming tolerant. And that's a much better result than whatever external results may manifest or not manifest. And Srila Prabhupada showed the example. He came and he tried so hard all his life, but he was so patient and perseverant and persistent, and he had faith, and everything happened in due course of time. But he taught us through his life's example that you have to be patient. And if you become impatient, there's a nice instruction by Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur. He says that when you're chanting and mundane thoughts come into your mind, he says, don't slacken. He said, focused mind on Krishna alone is the irrevocable fruit of chanting. Then he says, do not be impatient. So what's interesting is the mundane thoughts are not the problem. The problem is impatience. You have a preconceived idea of what it is you want and when you want it. And if you don't get what you want when you want it, then you slacken. So how can you stay enthused, determined, positive? Being enthusiastic is difficult. And then practicing with confidence is difficult. But being enthusiastic and confident over an extended period of time, that's patience. That's very difficult. Because we're thinking patience means half an hour. I'm doing it for half an hour. Should be getting a result by now. Or half a week. Or maybe a year at the most. If you're really patient. And then after 40 years, personally, I'm thinking, okay, so that's what patient means. So we have to be patient. We have to show that during our life that we're in this for the long haul. Going back to Godhead will take a lifetime. It's not something you can achieve in a year and then you can take the rest of your life off and just go and chill out in the Holy Dham. Everything's fine. I've got my ticket. One devotee was saying, the 4 rags and 16 rounds are your ticket back to Godhead, but then don't get lost in the duty free. Like people sometimes they've got their ticket and they know they're going back, and then they go in the duty free and they're like, wow, and then suddenly they realize, oh my God, I've missed my flight. So having the ticket is not enough. You've got to be there on time, and then you go back. Yes.
So devotees like it very much to develop a sense of confidence, and so when you're on the receiving end of confidence, even if you don't really feel that you earned it, so when there's so many compliments going around, it just depends that how can we stay so humble that so many people are praising us?
We can try and find somebody amongst our friends that we associate with who will give us feedback. We can say, look, it's nice. See, Krishna and Arjuna were there, they were the best of friends. And then Arjuna finally says, okay, look, stop being nice. Because Krishna calls them so many nice names, Gudikesh and Dhananjaya. He's complimenting him all the time. Son of Prita, reminding him of his heritage. And he says in the 10th chapter that of all the Pandavas, like Arjuna, I am Arjuna. So he's really complimenting. So Arjuna turns around and says, okay, look, cut all this. Just instruct me. Tell me exactly what it is I need to hear, And then the words weren't so sweet. They were more sharp, Sadhu means to cut. So who do you have in your life that you can trust enough to have open heart surgery performed, that they can cut in and they can say, you need to stop this and you need to start doing this. And that obviously must be there because, well, personally speaking anyway, I'm not a pure devotee yet with Krishna Prema. And if we're chanting and we're not experiencing ecstasy, then guaranteed we're performing offenses. And the 2 main ones are Vaishnava Aparad and inattentiveness. They're the 2 general ones that get committed. And so when we're chanting, we're not experiencing any ecstasy. So then we could be, when people say, no, you're doing really well, you're great, we can be thinking, well, that's nice, but I'm not experiencing ecstasy. Could you please help me? I trust you. Can you tell me what it is I'm doing that is slowing me down in my devotional practice? And that can take a while, actually. Trust is a very rare commodity. A father has 10 sons and he loves them all, but he only trusts one. Trust is something which is earned, and trust is something which can be broken. Somebody may trust you, and then you do something, and it breaks their trust. And then repairing the trust can be very difficult. Generally, it takes a consistent fulfilling of commitments to achieve a trustworthy platform. There's a book called 7 Habits of Highly Effective People. And it talks there about how we can invest in relationships, and keeping commitments is like chief element. So if you have a relationship with someone who does trust you, that you've earned, and you trust them to dissect you and say what it is. And if it's a good surgeon, then when you've had the operation, there's very little pain afterwards. If the surgeon's using a rusty scalpel that hasn't sharpened for 30 years and he just starts piling in there, then it's a very messy affair, and you don't heal very easily after that. But if the surgeon's expert and everything's very clean and clinical, and he knows exactly what he's doing, and he's very precise, then he can cut, he can do the bypass very, very easily, get rid of whatever is unwanted, sew it all back up, and then it's sore, but not so sore, So that's a bit of a gory example. And that's why we have to be patient, because you can't develop those relationships so quickly, I remember Prabhupada Prana telling me a story once about these, they had a reunion of all these, what do they call us? War heroes? veterans. And they'd only been together in the war for maybe, I don't know, a year or two. And they hadn't really thought that they were that close to each other, you know. But because they went through intense situations together, it bonded a very deep relationship. And then when they met each other after 40 years, they were in tears because they loved this person so much. They'd been through so much together, you know. They'd saved each other's lives and so many difficult situations, and then they were meeting again. So devotional service is like that as well. When you go through devotional service with somebody else, and then you maybe get separated from that person, you see them years later, and then it's a special. It was like that. We had a reunion of all the devotees that joined between 78 and 86, and so we were seeing each other sometimes after. For me, it'd been 40 years before I'd seen. And some of these devotees had said things to me then when I was just a bhakta in 1982, and it stayed with me my entire life, you know. We had one bhakti leader called Shukadev. He said, because I was asking him about chanting, I was finding it really hard to chant. He said, chanting is very easy. He said, the difficult part is getting the mind to chant as well. I forgot that one. That one will stay with me. So I was thanking him for that. That really helped. And he said, everybody wants everyone else to serve them. There's very few that want to serve others. We all want to be served. That's why we're here in the material world. We want everyone else to serve us. We don't want to serve others. So that one hit me as well. Any other questions or comments? Yes, Prema Prajna Prabhu. Haribol.
I have a question. I was wondering, I'm not very sure for devotees and how to find people free from some distress and difficulties. And when they experience some of this, I wonder, then what gives the motivation of having them that people and it's outside that situation and continue together that way.
Yeah, well, actually, Shiv Ramaj makes a nice point in Sankalpa Kaumudi, which is a nice book about making progress. It's like Shuddha Bhakti Chintamani, but it's more intense again. And so he says that there's 4 types of people that take to Krishna consciousness, and most of us are in distress. But Krishna says, the one who comes searching for the absolute truth is the most dear to me. So what he's indirectly saying is, you may have come to me in distress, but you have to come to the point of being searching for the absolute truth as quickly as possible, and then you'll become dear to me. If a person just comes to Krishna in distress, and the distress gets taken away, then he loses the incentive to come to Krishna anymore. It's great, not suffering anymore. We were doing this Namhat once, and this man came along, he's about 55, 60, and he seemed very sincere. And then he got a windfall. And so he kind of taken to Krishna consciousness because there's nothing in his life. And as soon as he got some money, then he was worried, hey, then maybe I have to give this to Krishna. So then he immediately stopped coming to the meetings anymore, stopped practicing Krishna consciousness, and went to go and enjoy his money, you know. So we may come because we're in distress, but when the distress gets removed, we have to shift gear. We've maybe come in first gear, but now we have to get up to 4th gear. And 4th gear is, I'm well versed with the knowledge, I'm fluent, I understand, and I realize to some degree that Krishna is the absolute truth, and that's my life's goal. We're on a multi-life journey to evolve to the point of becoming aware of our relationship with Krishna. That's actually what I want. I don't just want relief from distress. And if we're aware of that, then even if we do try to leave devotional service, once we've established that, then we can't really get back into material life because we realize the whole thing is false and it's temporary, and this is my core desire to connect again with my long-lost friend, Krishna. So the challenge is, can we get deep enough in the philosophy and faithful enough in the process so that when the distress abates, we don't immediately just become enamored again by our material desires. We start to get rid of these things. We may not realize those desires are unwanted, but by reading and becoming aware of the philosophy, we can start to realize, oh, this isn't actually good. You know, like when you're gardening, if you're trying to weed, but you don't know what a weed looks like. So you end up pulling out all the good ones and thinking the weeds are great, and you come back a month later and you realize, oh my God, they were the weeds. I've just pulled out all the plants. So if you know what a weed looks like, if you know what an unwanted thing is, then when that thing comes up, you can say, no, that's no good. No, that's no good. That's no good. No, I have to become steady. And then you can get rid of those things, you know. It's a challenge, actually. As soon as you take up devotional service, there's like a stopwatch, there's like a clock ticking now. Can you get free from the unwanted things before the distress abates and you just go back out to resume your material life, you know? There's a special day in the year when the eggs hatch and the little turtles that are in the eggs have to run. The mother has to lay the eggs high up so that they don't get washed out by the sea. But the problem with that is the day that they hatch, all these birds know and they're all waiting. And as soon as they hatch, the little turtle has to try and run to the sea. As soon as he gets to the sea, he's safe. But that run to the sea, a lot of turtles don't get there. They get flipped over by the bird, and then once the turtle's on its back, it can't do anything, and it just gets eaten alive. So we have to get to the shelter of Nishta as quickly as we can. Otherwise, we can get flipped over by Maya, and we can get eaten alive by our material desires. So it's kind of scary, really. If you think, oh, I'm just going to cruise, I'll just be a casual. Casual means casualty. Now that you've hatched, you need to run with every ounce of energy you've got to get into the ocean of Nishta, and then you're safe. And then from Nishta, getting to Uttama is reasonably easy. It's easier than getting from Kanishta to Madhyamara anyway. Okay, I've finished there. Hare Krishna, ISKCON Govinda ki, Srila Prabhupada ki, Gaura Premanandi, Hari Bol. All of you, ki jai.